keys to surgical success, and as we all know, there's all kinds of nuances with respect to fixing these fractures. It's not an easy thing to do, but I think that if you understand just a few principles, things can be a lot easier. So the first thing is to recognize the challenge. And, I work with residents and fellows, and they come to me and they say, hey, I have this great case and it's going to be a chip shot. And you look at the x-ray and you're like, that's not going to be a chip shot. Right. So you sort of recognize these very challenging x-rays, like, for example, this one. Right. So this might look like a chip shot, but it's not. That volar marginal fragment is a real bad player. And if you don't recognize that that exists, as part of your sort of preoperative surgical planning and make sure that you have the tools that you need to fix that, you end up with a disastrous outcome as the risk goes volar and proximal. And we learned this from Malone, and there's been multiple studies looking at the loads across the distal radius. And we know that that volar marginal fragment is like the anterior labrum in the shoulder, right? If it's not intact, everything kind of goes forward. And so you have to have some sort of fracture specific fixation for these injuries. And I like to use a little hook plate. This is another bad player. So this is a very, very distal radius fracture. And if you really scrutinize this x-ray, you can see that this articular surface has basically been sort of shaved off distally. You have part of the articular surface still intact. So you're going to have to fight that. This is a young person with good bone that, flew off his motorcycle. And so these very distal fractures can be incredibly challenging. And you want to make sure that, again, you're prepared to deal with all of these problems, which is, fracture lines past where you can place your plate.